I'm so happy you came, man. I really am. First, I apologize. The first couple of times, I think we, dropped communication a little bit down the road.
Good, yeah.
I think you showed up to my old place.
Yep.
And they were closed.
Yeah.
So I apologize. But I've really, when I started my show, I think I started it as your platform. Then I transitioned to Open Exchange. There were a handful of people I thought about wanting to be on my show, and you were one of them.
All right.
And I think I reached out to you in probably like March, April when I first started. So here we are in January 2025. Happy New Year, by the way.
Yeah, Happy New Year.
Yeah, and I'm excited because I think that obviously we've known each other a very long time from when my time at the church back in 2006 or 2007. We played a little, maybe even like 5-6 years after that, but played some softball together with Machete.
Machete, yeah.
I messed up my shoulder because of that, man. You guys had me pitching.
Lethal pitcher.
And I was pitching underhand. That's not good for a baseball player. Pitches over. So I messed up my shoulder because of that, but it was all good. It was a lot of fun. But we've known each other for a long time, and I've always respected your business acumen. I respected your faith. I respected the fact that you're a family man, and you've put them first above all, and you've put God in first. And I wanted to just kind of chop it up because not only are you doing that, but the stuff that you're doing in the community, specifically for dads. I think it's a Free Cut Thursday, Free Cut Friday.
Yep, Free Cut Thursday.
Free Cut Thursday. And I just want to unpack that with you because, one, I know a lot of people out there need it, but I think with men in general, we suffer this silent war. And I think when you are allowing people to reap the benefit of something generous like a haircut, men specifically, it maybe will kind of ease the pressure for some reason. I feel like that just kind of lets the guard down a little bit in men. So Danny Garcia, the owner of I Got You Next Barbershop, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for inviting me. I appreciate it. It was an honor when you reached out to me the first time.
Yeah.
So I remember you sent me a message. I was like, yo, man, one thing I know, like, you care about what you do.
Yeah, for sure, bro.
So just like you said, when you ruined your shoulder, the reason why he ruined his shoulder was because we didn't have a pitcher. So Paul said, all right, I think I could do it. He picked up the softball and started throwing like 100-mile-an-hour underhand pitches. We were like, oh, we good. But one thing I always knew about you is that if you're going to be involved in something, you're going to take pride in what you do.
For sure.
I didn't know the details of what it looked like or what it would sound like. But I said, of course, man. I know if you're doing it, it's gonna be, you're gonna care about it.
I appreciate it, and that's one thing. I ended up caring more about this than I thought I would. I thought it would just kind of be fun and just do it and get people on, and I didn't know how long this would go. And I think you will be episode 49.
That's crazy.
And I released in March. So, but yeah, that's just me in that sense, and that my wife calls it type A. I've recently found out that I have ADHD, and I've leveraged when it comes.
My wife thinks the same thing.
Who doesn't have it these days, right? But I think it's a superpower, right? Because now I can figure out things that I really am passionate about, and I'm gonna go all in on it. And not that I'm not passionate about other areas in my life, like work and stuff like that, but I just find something that it brings me joy, brings me happiness, and I'm able to kind of move forward. Let's talk quickly. I want to go first about the business. I think that one, you have a really well-oiled machine in your barbershop, but when you first went through that process of building I Got You Next. Obviously, it goes back to decades of cutting hair, different barbershops, kinetic cuts, things like that, famous, whatnot. When I Got You Next came up, what was that vision for you? Like, how'd you come about that vision of I Got You Next? This is what I'm going to do. I'm pretty sure it's a school as well, right?
Yep, as a school as well.
Yeah.
So I'm going to bring it back to how it started. So I started in the barbershop at the age of like 16, right? The barbershop was my main source of money for almost all my life. All right, so 16, 17, 18, I'm in the barbershop. After I get out of high school, a year after that, I get married, but I'm still in the barbershop. You know what I'm saying? So I'm young, but now I went from just cutting for me to now cutting for family, But the problem was that I was in the city, you know, and we were a popular barbershop, and there was a lot of barbers. So anybody in the city that wanted a good haircut would go there. So the problem with that is that you got everybody in the city showing up at one location. Anybody who has a problem with each other are gonna meet in the barbershop. You know what I mean? So the barbershop, although it was a hangout, but it was so popular as in my upbringing that I seen so many things growing up. So as a business person, I had to look at the fact of that there was a need.
Yeah.
And I love the people that I work with. I love the person who owned it. You know what I'm saying? But the problem was that I couldn't bring my personal family there.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Wow.
Because the atmosphere was more like a locker room.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You don't bring your family into the locker room.
Right.
The talk you have in the locker room with the fellas is locker room talk.
For sure.
But this ain't a locker room. This is a business. So after a while, as I got older, conversations with me and my wife, I was explaining to her, I realized that there was a need. You know what I mean? And this information came from a video I had seen back then from T.D. Jakes, I believe. And he was talking about business, and he said, if you're gonna open up a business, make sure your business is solving a problem. Because if your business is not a solution to a problem, then why do you exist?
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
So as soon as I heard that, I was speaking with my wife, and boom, it came to my mind. There is a problem. This is the problem. That you have people from different walks of life that want to get this inner city style haircut, but they don't want the inner city experience.
Wow.
You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So people were coming to that setting. People were coming to the setting. Yeah. To some, they even knew maybe it was dangerous.
Right.
Or maybe the music was going to be explicit. Or maybe the conversations that we're going to have weren't appropriate for the setting. They knew that, but the product was so good, they were willing to put themselves in that situation. You understand?
That's wild. Let me ask you real quick. How were you able to identify that that's the problem at such a young age? Because when you're around that environment so much, you become that environment, right?
Right.
I'm a victim of adapting to a situation that might not necessarily be, I don't want to say it's negative, but does it fill my spirit? Like you said, would I bring my family into these situations? Probably not. But how are you able at a young age able to identify that?
Well, it was due to the fact of two important things. First of all, my faith in God.
Yeah.
Keeping me balanced, morally balanced. And then I'm a family man. I'm married. I got my son. You know what I mean? You're thinking completely different.
Yeah.
I'm not thinking of going to the shop and it's a hangout, although I'm young, so it's fun.
Right.
When I get out of that setting, my responsibility is reminding me every day, like, you can't have fun.
Yeah.
You can't have the best of both worlds here.
Right.
You can't pay all your bills and then work in a setting like that where the customer satisfaction isn't being valued. You know what I'm saying? If anything, the power shift is on the actual business, because they're like, the product is so good, it don't matter what's the atmosphere we provide. They're gonna, and that's where a lot of businesses fall, when the product is hot. When the product is hot, your values are down. You're not really focused on marketing. You're not focused on nothing. But the product is so hot, the customers are gonna come to me. And then you get stuck in that mentality, and then your foundation, whatever that was. So if you had good customer, if you appreciated your customers, you're gonna operate in that manner. So your foundation is strong.
Right.
So when the product isn't there, people still want to support the brand. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But when you're just a product and you don't value the customers, when the product ain't hot no more,
right.
you're not gonna be hot anymore.
For
you know?
For sure.
So anyways, all these things you realize from me hearing that video from TD Jake saying, what's the problem? So we both know. In our market, we have the Navy.
Yeah, right.
All right? We have the Navy. So the Navy is one of the biggest customers in our area because they have to get a haircut to uphold a certain regulation.
Right. And this is all going in your mind. Like, where am I going to position this barbershop?
Oh, exactly.
Yeah, wow.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So growing up, when I worked in Groton for a little while, and I was a year out of high school, and I was making like $1,000 a week. And I'm talking about as a 19-year-old. We're talking about 2000, 3, 4, 5. I
Yeah,
don't
yeah.
remember. You know
Yeah,
what I
that's a
mean?
lot of
Early
money.
2000s. That's
Yeah,
a lot of money.
Yeah, back then, yeah.
What? So I knew Groton was good because of Navy, you know? So I said, all right. And I said, and anyone that values the haircut will cross a bridge.
Sure.
Well, I'm nothing but maybe 7 miles away from my old location, or 10. So anyways, to answer your question, yeah, that was it. The fact that I couldn't bring my own family.
Right.
You know what I mean? I couldn't bring my own kids.
Yeah.
If I did, I had to be on it. What music is being heard? What?
Right.
But why do I have to do this just for my family? This should be something that's being done for everybody.
It's amazing how simple of a change that was, simple of a thought that instead of, again, I've been in insurance for 10 years now, and I often try to overcomplicate certain things on what to do. Something as simple as, would I bring my family here? No. And, what was the last part you said? Will I bring my family here? No. Is this the environment that that I enjoy being in?
Right.
And that's a very simple answer to your problem, that if you knew you felt this way, other people felt that way.
Right. And I knew, and with me being, raised in the church, I knew there was certain people at my church I couldn't even invite to the shop.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Because I didn't have that. And I'm not talking bad about the shop.
No.
Because that's a culture that many love.
For sure.
But what I'm saying is, in regards to me forming a business, I needed to know what was going to work for me.
Correct.
And my brand, and what's not going to work. Right. What makes another company successful, you know what I mean? And their systems they have in play works for them.
Yeah.
I can't just copy and paste and think I'm going to have the same solution, you know? And I'm going to use that to say this important thing. When you gave me an introduction, you know what I mean? Like, you said, family man, businessman, all this and all that, And I'm at a certain age in life where if I can't pour something that's truthful to somebody, I'd rather not pour nothing. You know what I'm saying? And this is what I mean by that. That growing up, you work, whether it's your business, no matter whatever your brand is, you're working for an accolade.
Right.
You're working for the name. You're working for my reputation.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? That when you see successful people, those are the things you copy and paste.
Right.
You can only copy what you see.
Right.
All right? So I'll give you a funny story. You know what I mean? Growing up, we saw all these famous rappers. Puff Daddy, P. Diddy. You saw, Tupac. You name them.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So growing up in hip-hop culture, we're extracting our life lessons from these people because that's what's in our face. That's what we see.
Right.
That's what we listen to. That's what we watch. So to be successful growing up, I'm looking at these figures and I'm like, okay, so in order for me to be successful and reach what they got, fame, money, I got to copy X, Y, Z. All right? Because now I don't have a conversation with them. I don't know nothing. So I'll copy. So opening up a business, I Got You Next Barbershop, 2015. I never been to college.
Right.
I never took a business class.
Yeah.
There was nobody in my family that owns a business, that's self-employed. So open up a business, I figured like, I cut hair, open up a shop, and I'll cut.
Yeah.
But I went into the mentality of these hip-hop icons I saw growing up. So I had the mentality of I'll rest when I die. I remember hearing one of them say that, yo, I'll rest when I die. In other words, like while I'm alive, I'm going to put in all this work.
Right.
So I put in all the work, chasing the American dream, trying to chase the house with the fence and all that. But the one thing I failed to realize is that you can only obtain so much. In order for me to take a hold of this bottle, my hands got to be empty.
Right.
Okay? So there's only so many amount of water bottles I could hold. I'm designed to hold. All right? Now, same thing in life. I have 24 hours. I'm limited on my options.
Right.
What I do in this 24 hours is what I do in this 24 hours. So I dedicated my time to the business because my mentality was, I'll rest when I die. I'll do all this with this mentality of for my family.
Can I ask you something about that?
Yeah.
What do you think? What kind of impact did that have on you? I think that we can get into as men, right? Because that I rest when I die goes back to the foundation of what you said, right? It goes back to I'm doing this for not me, I'm doing it for my family, right? And there's a little bit of ego that goes into it because you know, one, that what you're capable of, and you know that when you get to a level of success, you are going to do one of two things. You're going to keep grinding to get to more success, or you're going to stop and you're going to go the other way and you're going to regress. What kind of impact do you think that had on you? Let's just say for the first few years of your business, do you think that I rest when I die mentality was, I'm not saying bad for the business, but more so for you? Do you feel like you spread yourself thin in certain areas of your life? Because if you're giving 100% to X, you're taking away from other parts too, right?
Yep.
Whether it be your faith, whether it be your relationship with God, whether it be your relationship with your family, your friends, it takes away from that. How are you able to balance that? Or is that something that's a continued work in progress?
All right. So to answer that, by the way, that's a great question. And to answer that truthfully, it's impossible for you to check off all the boxes you put out.
For sure.
Without a doubt. But when you have this mentality of I rest when I'm gonna give my all, especially in the business, I'm gonna give my all for this, because you know the stats. The stats are that most businesses don't make it to their first year anniversary.
yeah, for sure.
You know the stats.
Yeah.
You know, I'm minority. You know what I'm saying? I didn't go to college.
Yep.
You know, my parents didn't go to college. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So you know that. You know the weight. You know you got a wife at home. You got kids that are relying on this. Danny, you did good in the barbershop when you were a barber.
Yeah.
But this ain't the same.
Right.
Now you can't run to nobody when you got an issue. You got to fix whatever is the situation that's at hand. You got to deal with it, you know? And so being truthful for me, I almost lost it all. Chasing for the business, great, because the business could grow, but the business is not married. The business is just a product. So the business itself, that's good for business because the doors open every day. But like you said, you know, I can't give my family me, and I can't give my business all of me. You know, and so chasing that dream, I realized that the people that love you the most, the one thing they want from you more important than anything is time with you. Time with you. You know what I mean? The trips are good for photos. The trips are good for memories. You know what I'm saying? In a photo, you could look happy. You know what I mean? Videos, you could look like you're involved. You know? So that works for the public. You know, people online will be like, oh, you're a good dad. You're a good husband because you're in all the right photos. You're everywhere where you need to be, but you're not everywhere
that you have to
people
be.
Need that you have to be. Thank you. You know what I mean? So I learned that. So when we first opened up the shop, I was there by myself working 12 hours a day, 7 days a week. You know, me and my wife's relationship got impacted by that. You know, you take someone that's close to you and take them away, you know, and as a man, you get blinded by that stuff. You get blinded by giving materialistic things to your family as you love. It's in our DNA. You know, if you want to bring it back in the old days, guys used to hunt the food, bring food to the tribe, you know? It's in our DNA to want to give things to people that we love.
I read a book. It's a really good book. It's called The Way of the Superior Man. And very much what you said is it's innate in us to want to be a provider. It's not, you know, I think that culturally that has been not as accepted as it used to be because of that, right? The taking away from X to do this. And I actually, and I would say I feel more balanced on the idea of like, I do agree that I have to put X amount of time with this and X amount of time with that. I do believe in that for sure. But we historically have been wired to operate in a way that we are the provider for our family, our women. And that's just a masculine trait. And, you know, those traits, I would say right now, those traits not everybody has those traits anymore. Right. Those traits are kind of, going away. So I do believe that should continue on with for people, for men specifically, and having this, not necessarily putting all that weight, but just knowing that this is something that's going to benefit. But again, going back to it, it's taken away from X, the sacrifice, on the idea of sacrifice too. It really has been kind of just, on my brain a lot. Like, obviously when we think of the ultimate sacrifice, who do we think of? We think of Christ, right?
Right.
We do things in our life. I'm sacrificing time for work right now. You're sacrificing time for work right now. Why? Because we feel the value of what this is going to be. I can, do something that's work related. And then what am I sacrificing? I'm sacrificing time away from my family. Sacrifice is part of our life. And it's just figuring out what the level of sacrifice are we willing to take to, and this kind of goes back to that book, what we are willing to take that's going to, do we need balance? Do we need and I think it comes down to communication too, right? Like, who's on board on the amount of sacrifice that I'm willing to take right now, right? The thing that Jesus did is that he already knew about, this is the sacrifice I'm going to take. I don't need anybody's approval.
Right.
But I think for us, when it comes to the amount of sacrifice that we need to take, we do need to have this communication with people. Listen, are you on board with this kind of sacrifice that I'm going to take so I can hit X? And that's kind of what I was going back to, like, when you think about the impact of going all in, going 120, 30, 150% into the business, what that level of sacrifice was and what did it do? And was there, did you have those communications with your family? Did you have communication with your employees? Did you have communication with whomever to get you to where you are now with a successful business?
All right. I'm loving your questions because we're able to get this message out. Because I've gotten people that have reached out to me personally, online, and they'll ask me some sort of a business. I just had a guy ask me last week, I want to open up a business. What should I do? Like, how do I know how to open it? And these are important factors, to me, the important factor, because it's going to come down to this. Do you want to have a successful business and an empty home? That's what it is. That's what it is. You want to give your all to your business and have it reach the ultimate level of success, but then you go home to an empty house. You know what I'm saying? Like, what's important to you? You know what I mean? Because you can still have a successful business and you can still have your family. You know what I mean? But is what you consider to be success, what your definition of that is? You know what I'm saying? So I didn't realize these things until it was almost gone. You know what I mean? And so I'm hearing from my kids, they need more time from me.
Yeah.
So I'm hearing from my wife, they need more time from me. You know what I mean? Now I'm not going to church. You know what I mean? I'm working Sundays.
Yeah.
Because I'm prioritizing, and then as a man of faith, I'm even taking faith into my own hands. Because it's like I'm doing my part and I'm doing God's part.
Yeah.
It's like, so God, although you call me to rest and even giving me weekends or days to rest or days off, I'm still going to I'm still going to work. Right. I'm going to work until I can't work. I don't even got time for you. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like at a certain point, pain is going to dictate to you certain choices you need to make. You should have made them. Now you're at the point where now you're relying on pain and heartbreak to dictate, like, oh shoot, I need this to be balanced, So to me, that was like an eye opener for me, that I'm doing all these things for my family and things that they didn't necessarily want from me. You know what I mean? And we do that same era with our children. As men, we want to give our kids things that we didn't have growing up.
Right.
Like when I'm sure that when you find out I'm about to have a child, it's like, oh, I'm about to give my child this lifestyle I never have. Okay. A lot of that comes from the life. Actually, all of it comes from what you just said. I'm going to give my kid something that I didn't have.
Right.
But this is an era we all fall in. This is a trap we fall into. That as the child is growing up, we're giving our child, everything we didn't have as a child.
Right.
Then it gets to a point, like it happened to me, when my child in their teenage years tells me, well, we need more time. We feel like we don't have enough time with you. And it's like, what? After everything I've given you, you don't know what I would have gave to have what you got.
Right.
But that's the problem. You're only giving your child what you didn't have. You're not giving your child what they need.
You say that one more time.
You know what I'm saying? You're only giving your child what you didn't have. You're not giving your child what they need.
Wow.
You know what I'm saying?
Wow.
And that I didn't even realize that to working with Anchor of Hope. You know, as a nonprofit that I work on, and you know, I work with dads, and like you said in earlier in the introduction, and I didn't even realize this stuff. I didn't even realize the impact a man has on his family.
Yeah.
I didn't realize the impact a father has on his child. You know, there was a study. I want to.
Go on.
I just want to say this one thing. There was a study that was done in Florida, and I forget the exact percentage. I think it was like in the 48s, almost half of children didn't live. Children didn't live to they make it to their first birthday. And the percentage was almost half of them that didn't live, didn't have a father involved.
Wow.
Bro, crazy.
You know, I said this on, when did I say this? I did an episode by myself. It was called a fatherless father, because I grew up without a father. I didn't know my dad. I had maybe 2 conversations with him in my entire life. You know, raised by a single mother, stepdad, things like that. But, you know, I think that the presence of a dad, and I think ultimately what I want to give back most to my children is very much that, to be present, right? We have 2 now, 1 on the way. Like, I want to be as present as possible. And in college, I had a professor, his name was George Wesner, criminal justice major, and had him probably 4 or 5 times in my 4 years at Mitchell College. He would say, if there's one thing that a father could give their children, is to show their children how much he respects and loves their mother. And that's one thing, someone who hadn't grown up with a father, that has always sat with me, because ultimately, right, like you said, and that's probably one of the most impactful things I've ever heard on this show, is that we are trying to give children what we always wanted. That statement right there. I mean, and listen, I'm very proud of everything that I've done and accomplished. You know, there's more that I want to accomplish. There's probably still more that I want to give to my kids that I never had. But I think that we get lost in that idea that everything we never had, we don't even know, right? So meaning that we don't even know what we're shooting for. How could we sit here and say what we never had? We're not saying that we never, things we wanted. These are things I wanted, right? I wanted a house. I wanted, the fence, the dog, the this, the that. But hearing that things that we never wanted, how could we give them that? How could we give them something we never wanted? Right? Like,
right.
So I going back, make this full circle.
Wait, can I say something at that point?
Sure.
All right. So my answer to that is, and the answer that I've found through hearing it through my kids, is you find that answer on giving your kid something that you never had is by hearing what they need. If you don't hear their needs, you'll never know. And that's the thing. Sometimes we want to give. I love you, I give.
Yeah.
But me working and me giving you something, that action doesn't give fruit to an intimate relationship with you.
Right.
It's just me giving you a gift.
Right.
I'm a good gifter. I know how to give you things.
Yeah.
But it don't mean I know you.
Right.
It don't mean I'm spending time with you.
So let me come back now. What did I never have that, just to again make this full circle?
Good.
What did I never have in my explanation of not growing up with a father? And I never had a father. I never had someone who showed their mother that they loved them, that they respect them. My mom had boyfriends in and out, right? She had, she was married to one guy. They got divorced. They stayed together. There was volatile. There was arguing. There was, it was very Hispanic, if you will, right? Yeah. No disrespect to the Hispanics out there. There's very, obviously we're both Hispanic, but there's
a lot of animosity.
A lot of animosity. He gets home from work. Why isn't the dishes done? Why isn't the food cooked? That's what I saw for 9 years of their relationship. What I never had, what I am giving to my kids, is that presence of a father and the love that I show their mother. Because at the end of the day, I think love obviously encompasses everything, right? And go back to Corinthians, right?
Right.
And I want to make sure that my kids live this life, go through life, treating not just their mother like that, but everybody like that with love and respect.
Right.
So the tangible things, yeah, that's cool. But like you said, when I think of that's why I said I want to make it full circle from what the professor told me, because that's the one thing that I can give that I never had. And I almost just answered my question of like, what can I give when I never knew what I wanted to give them. And it's just that.
All right. So just I'll give you some insight. So when I talk to a dad, right, for the first time, I don't know if I'm going to see him again. Right. So this one like little topic that we're talking about, I try to have with every guy. And the way I have this conversation with the fathers is that I give them like a pipe cleaner. You know what I'm talking about? Like the party where you shape it. So I ask them, take this pipe cleaner, you know what I mean? Or you could visualize, to anyone listening. And when you think of your dad, what is the first shape or object that comes to mind?
Circle.
A circle. Why a circle?
Because it's very flexible and easy to bend.
And still, why? How does that correlate with the thought of a father?
So the thought of that.
Wait. Let me stop you. Yeah. When I mean father, let me clarify more. Sure. I mean your experience on having a father or not having.
Okay.
So that child, that mentality. Anytime you would think of your dad, or when you're thinking about your past, you think of your dad. What's a shape that would define what you think your experience with your dad was?
Having not had a dad present, and the shape, what a pipe cleaner is, it's straight, it's bendy.
Yep.
I would say that it would be very much almost like a pulse. That's kind of how I would.
Okay, like a heart. All right.
Like that's kind of how I would.
Why?
Because the pulse of not having a father, or that image of it being like this, is the volatility of my childhood, of not having someone there who was able to teach me how to fight, if you will, or not that fighting is, I'm condoning fighting, but
right. I get it.
Teach you a little, more of the discipline on certain things. Was at my baseball games, my mom was there, right? So for me, it was what I never realized until later down on the road, is that I was emotionally detached from certain things, which one I think I still struggle with for some things in life today. But it's very guarded, very upset with what I thought of him, which, by the way, in my episode that I did, I've long forgiven him for what he's done. That's not something what I live with today.
Right.
But to answer your question, it would just be the volatility of emotion as a young man. So I can't necessarily say that pipe cleaner makes an image, or I can say what image I can create of my dad, because he wasn't there. But it was just that volatility of the lack of presence that he was there.
So the reason why I asked you that, like I asked many fathers, is because it's very important for us to classify what fatherhood means, or the experience was for us, so that we don't repeat it,
right?
And we don't act out of that lack of that need that was there. You know what I mean? So once you're able to classify, I didn't have it that. So that means that your experience on fatherhood, if you had to choose positive or negative, you got to choose a negative, because that's the only choice you got due to it being absent. You know what I mean? Like, guys don't understand that just with you not being there, right? Just the fact that a child has to say, yeah, my dad is not in my life.
Yeah.
There's a whole bunch of feelings that are wrapped into that. You think like, oh, I'm a bad person. I'm not. Just the fact that there's a need there.
For sure.
Where there's a need, there's a space to get filled with something.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Something is filling that, whether it's pain,
right,
whether it's hurt, no matter what it's being, there's a void that if you're not involved, there's a void.
For sure.
And something's going to fill it. They're going to look to fix it. Our body is designed to, for the most part, fix itself.
Yeah.
So we tend to try to fix ourselves and cover up,
So going to the haircuts for men. you know, that's something that I think one is very noble of you to do. Where'd that come from? What's the, you know, background behind that? You know, that because you just started this within the last year or so.
Yeah. So like I said, I on two days out the week, I'm at a nonprofit. It's called Anchor of Hope. You know, they offer a lot of services for families, for pregnancy, for fatherhood, and so I'm a fatherhood coordinator. My job is to just help fathers be there available. It's almost like a support group for that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So with the director I spoke to, I'm like, hey, you know, I work at the barbershop. You know how guys feel. She understands the whole dynamic. And we partnered up. So instead of me being at the office, I'm at the shop.
Yeah.
And I used the free haircuts as a way for dads to, you know, get a thank you for doing what you're doing.
Yeah.
But also a little space to talk. You know, sometimes we talk about the kids, sometimes we talk about sports. It's just like, you know, sometimes we just talk about, you know, it's basically encouragement.
Just life.
It's encouragement, you know? Nobody's going to understand a father like another father. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's certain things that your significant other, your wife, your girlfriend, whatever, she's not going to understand.
Right.
To her is not going to place value on what you place value as a father.
Right.
So you need another father to be able to tell you, yo, I understand what you're going through, you know?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
What do you think men struggle with the most these days? I mean, there's a lot of noise everywhere. We can't get away from it, whether it be politics, whether it be just cultural, entertainment. You know, you see the media, you know, there's half naked women on the media, there's half naked men on TV. Like, nothing on TV is really that entertaining anymore. It's really feeding you with, and this is not just a men thing, but I would just in the discussion, because I do think men silence this a lot in their lives. You know, but you know, there's all sorts of things that are just flooding the minds of men. Out of all of that, what do you think men struggle with the most?
That's a great question. The first thing that comes to my mind is not feeling good enough for themselves.
Yeah.
Like feeling like they're not doing enough.
Right.
You know what I mean? No matter what spectrum you want to look at it. You want to look at it. We could go to like the successful guy trying to climb up the ladders.
Sure.
It's never enough. You got a house, you got a whatever, because of, you know, your aspirations. Where you're at's never enough. It's never enough. The car isn't the car. The house isn't the, you know, I don't got the pool. My house don't got the pool. You know, I don't got the new Mercedes. I'm not taking vacations. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's always not good enough. Or you could be anywhere. You could be in a relationship. You're a good worker, but you're not good emotionally.
Right.
You know?
Right.
So you're in a relationship, you're feeling like you're not good enough. And then guys don't talk.
Yeah.
Don't talk. Bottle it up. And you'll be surprised of when I'm cutting hair, how one question could segue into a deep conversation like that.
Yeah.
Guys bottle that stuff up in.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Well, I guess that's the thing, is like, why? Because I agree. I think, again, going back to when I was younger, the emotional detachment that I've had to just things, just, you know, my focuses were sports, my focuses were women. You know, I lacked discipline in a lot of areas of my life. And I think that we are not told that it's okay that we've gone through some of the things that we've gone through. And again, I'm not saying that I needed that to walk through life as somebody telling me, oh, it's okay to struggle with what you're struggling with. But I think it is okay to struggle with what you're struggling with. Without you can't identify struggle if you don't know what success is. So the simple fact that you're identifying struggle is a mere fact of, you know, how to be successful. The problem is that struggle, I think, and I believe, struggle goes into the lack of discipline, complacency, and comfort, right? You know, I'm in the process right now, and actually doing a mini series right now called, it's Dry January. People are, don't drink. In January, I like to have a few beers quite often. And the biggest thing for me was always being disciplined and not just, have friends coming over tonight. What are they going to do? They're going to want to have a few drinks. Like, I have to be disciplined enough to do that, to not have the drink. They can have it, but, even though it's around me, I should be able to stay strong. But I think that we don't have the conversations enough because of the appearance that we look at ourselves in a different way than what the world perceives us. And we want you know who Jay Shetty is?
No.
So Jay Shetty goes on one of his episodes, and I'm going to try to not mess this up. You don't view me how, so hold on. You don't view me how I think you view me. Okay. So you don't see me how I think you see me. You see me. No, sorry. I don't think you see. I can't even see.
That's all right. I'm following though. I'm not.
But basically, it's my perception on how you perceive me isn't how I think you see me. It's how I think you see me, how I see you seeing me. And we are focused outwardly on this appearance. And I think it's a subconscious thing, to be completely honest, because we can go to church on Sunday and feel really good and say a message and pray and go home that night and have dinner with our family. Then Monday rolls around and Tuesday we're still feeling good. Something happens on Wednesday and then we shift a little bit because of whatever's happening. So that can happen. Or, I can go to work and just be on my game and really be on top of the stuff that I'm doing for that week or that month. And all of a sudden something shifts. And it's all about the perception of how I think you see me, how I think you see me, that I see.
I get it.
So I think we struggle with this, and I think it's not a thing that's just kind of going to go away. I think it's supposed to be this way, if that makes sense. Because I don't think that if we didn't, going back to what I said, if we didn't have struggle, there's no success, and vice versa. You can't have success without struggle. So I think that we're innately supposed to be navigating through these, not on our own. I think I truly, I believe in the word. I believe in God, going to church, things like that. Some people do therapy. Some people meditate. Some people do yoga, whatever it is for that person. But I think it's almost supposed to be, and again, it's the amount of noise that we see. We have all this BS in front of us, and it's very easy to be distracted, which is, I think, part of the game. The problem is how do we detach those distractions so we can kind of lock back into what we need to achieve?
So to answer your question, what keeps guys from not, showing that the struggle is pride.
Right.
At the end of the day, that's all we got.
Right.
Is our pride, how we carry ourselves, what we think of ourselves at the end of the day, and in order to change, and when you're vulnerable, pride becomes something that has to change, without a doubt. It has to change because pride, if I follow pride, is going to lead me to materialistic lifestyle, which is going to lead me to want to chase money. Yeah. So I could get success, so I could get this materialistic that's going to build my brand because I'm prideful about these matters. Yeah.
Yeah.
So guys will hide behind that because my wife is looking at me as strong. Right. I may not be X, Y, Z. She might complain about anything, but my family's going to know that I'm a worker, that I'm strong. So if that's the only thing I'm good at, this is how guys fall into this own prison cell. There's the only thing I'm good at. I gotta look like I'm being good at this every day.
So that's exactly what I just said. Yeah. Right? It's so that pride is not how I see me, it's how I think you see me and my perception of that in itself. Right. That's what the pride is, is there a fix to it? Do we get to a point where we can say, hey, I am vulnerable. Do I continue? Do men need to have more of these conversations? Like, is this something that fixes that? Because I do think that ultimately, right, we have, your dad, I'm a dad, we know a lot of dads and we're there for our families, but there's a generation of dads that are not a part of their families. And unfortunately, statistically, what happens? The kids that follow, that's just kind of the same path when it comes to certain things. Statistically, I'm not saying as a broad statement, but, you know, when you look at some of the more, you know, urban cities and whatnot, you know, the fatherless problem, I mean, again, nationwide, but the fatherless issue is a huge problem, you know, and, you know, you look at the young 20-year-olds or 16-year-olds, 18-year-olds, gangbang, and you look back, where's your dad? Oh, I don't know my dad, or my dad's in jail, or my dad's dead. Not existent. And that will, in turn, you know, ruin a young man's life, or they just carry emotional baggage. Now, there's some that come out and do well, and they're successful, and they're able to leverage that.
Right.
I do think when that happens, there may be a piece or two around them that's allowing them to move in that direction, and they identify like, oh, I can't live this kind of lifestyle. But I do think that these conversations need to be had more with men, because we are in a silent battle, not with anyone but ourselves. And to be able to openly, like even just now talking to you about this, you know how much weight just feels like is lifting off my shoulders, because it's sitting here like, yo, it's okay. Like things are happening, and that's all right. We're not in this world. Listen, one thing I've learned very quickly is life is moving very fast, right? I'm 35, I'll be 36 this summer. Like I have 2 kids, 1 on the way. Statistically, I've lived half my life. Hopefully I live a lot longer than that, but I'm just saying, like, with the way things are going, I live half of my life. And that's just me being like honest of what's going on. And I just don't want to continue living life in this almost shadow of myself, where I am not just being who I am because of the pride that I have, because of the egos that I have. Like, you know, again, I like working hard. I like doing some of these things, but at the end of the day, the only thing that matters is what I can give, and I think what I can give emotionally.
Right. So my response to how do we combat that is, I'd say love. Yeah. Without a doubt, love.
Yeah, you need to read that book.
You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Because love is going to allow you to value the important things in life.
For sure.
And when you love something and you're going to lose something you love, you give up anything for it. You know what I mean?
For sure.
So it's defining what are the things in life that I love. I'm not talking about I love my car.
Right.
I'm not talking about, no, don't get me wrong, all right? If you don't got a family, you don't got kids, then your responsibility is to yourself.
Right.
You know what I mean? But I'm talking about once you're in a family, once you have kids, you know what I mean? Now you have responsibility towards those things.
Yep.
And because you love those things, you're willing to take certain actions that hurt. You're willing to take certain decisions that may come against your pride. You know what I mean? When you love something, you're going to take actions that may be unfavorable to the common person, you know?
Right.
I've raised kids. Sometimes I got to tell my kids no.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes you got to tell your kid they got to move out. You know what I mean? Yeah. Pride will say, no, I'm gonna keep my kid in my house till they're 30 because I don't want people to think that I'm a bad person. No, I love my child. So if it comes to the point where I got to teach them a strong life lesson, because I love them and I want them to be survivors and thrivers, not just survive. I want you to thrive. You're gonna take action out of love. See, if I'm operating in pride, whatever.
Yeah.
Do whatever you want, child. Disrespect, do whatever. Because I'm going to operate in pride and I'm going to let the world make it look like we have the perfect family and I'm taking care of you. And you're acting crazy. And you need life. If God teaches us lessons out of love, God don't say yes every time. God says no. God sometimes don't answer certain prayers. You know what I'm saying? Out of love. I may not understand why. And I tell you, there's certain things I don't understand. You know what I'm saying?
I just finished reading a book called Conversations with God, and that right there, that we so the Bible says that He's giving us everything that we can ask or ever think of. Right? The Bible says that. In the book Conversations with God by Neil Donald Walsh, he goes, when you pray with supplication, meaning that when you pray, you're praying, asking for something that you don't already have. I said to myself, wow, you're basically begging me for things that you already have. So then what all it is it's just you're just requesting things like, but haven't I told you have what you're ready to ask for? So when you pray, you shouldn't be praying, asking for these things. You should just be praying in gratitude. You should be praying in worship. You should be thankful. And when I read that, man, I tell you, I was like, it kind of shifted how I operate with prayer. Because if we know we have it, why are we praying for it? And I do believe that, and actually this is a perfect segue because I wanted to, talk before we wrap up in a little bit, kind of discuss the walk in the faith a little bit before we head out here. But I actually genuinely believe that with gratitude will allow you to have and receive the things that God has already lined up for us. I truly believe that. So that being said, what's the walk like for you? Because I know the walk like for me, it's again, going back to what I said earlier, my thing is discipline, and I adapt to the environments that I'm in. And I'm really trying to challenge myself to kind of, start, knocking off the rust, if you will, when it comes to faith. It's been this roller coaster of, for 3 or 4 months, I feel like I'm listening to my gospel music, I'm praying, I'm doing this, and, I'm watching a sermon online, things like that. And a couple months go by and I'm, have a few more drinks, and, New Year's Eve was just here, things like that. So, what's that like for you and where you are in your walk?
Great question. I know, but just so I can update the listeners. So I was raised, so I bring it way back.
Yeah.
I was born, I was up for adoption. I was adopted by my mom. You know what I mean?
Never knew that.
Yep. Not a lot of people do. I found this out in my 20s. But so I was adopted. I was adopted into a family, mother, Pentecostal, Christian woman. I was raised up in the church since, when I was a kid, going there every day, slept under the bleachers because, services are mad long, you name it. As a teenager, I was a preacher as preach for the youth. I preached and taught from the Bible as a young man. So all my life, I've been involved in this, right? So I'm glad you asked the question, because where I'm at in this stage of my life, like you said, man, I've already lived half of my life. You know what I mean? Me a little bit more. I'm 41, so. As a family man, as all that, I'm learning. I'm in a stage where I'm currently not preaching, but it's because I'm learning to love God, but the God that says no. You know what I'm saying? All my life, I've been raised in the church. I know all the one-liners.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But one-liners are like bandages.
Right.
You know what I mean? I could give you every line in the Bible like a fortune cookie and just give it to you just like a vitamin. You know what I'm saying? But I realized that unless you are able to digest the truth of it, you know what I mean? It won't help you in the test of time. You know what I mean? Because what the whole message of the Bible has to do with a relationship.
Right.
You know what I mean? Relationship, not a subscription, a relationship. So in this relationship, if I can't find truth in it, I'm not gonna have a relationship with someone there's no truth in.
Right.
If I know this person is lying about everything he says to me, I want nothing to do with him.
Right.
So in life, we're taught, at least I felt like I was growing up, that God says yes a lot. And that God gives a lot of blessings. And if he doesn't, there's something wrong with me. There's nothing wrong with him. But I was it never really processed in my mind that sometimes God says no.
Yeah.
And sometimes God lets things happen that you don't want to happen. So growing up, when you need something to really happen and you confront the God that says no or the God that doesn't answer because he knows his plan and you don't know it, will ruffle all your feathers, will shake up your whole belief system. Yeah. Because your whole belief system, you had this shallow perception that I could almost get God to do anything for me if I pray long enough, or if I fast, or if I read the Bible long enough. But when you do those things, you check off all the boxes, and it still don't happen, now what?
Right.
Now your system seems though something's wrong.
That's a conditional love that we have, that he's unconditional.
Right? So if we look at the scenario, we don't know God. Well, I'll speak for myself. I don't know God, that type of God. I only knew the God that was like yes and blessings and positive and change everything for the good. But I didn't know that sometimes he'll let me drown.
Right.
I didn't know that sometimes I got to go through the valley of death and it's really dark and I'm by myself.
Yeah.
You know? And he knows I'm by myself.
Right.
And he knows it hurts and he's letting it happen.
Yeah.
You know? To learn to love that God. You know what I mean? So in my walk, I'm finding that connection. And obviously when you arrive at that point is because pain allows you to look at your belief system and say, all right, this is intact or it's not intact. Do I have the truth or do I have a bumper sticker?
Right.
You know what I mean? Everybody, if you look around, you know, I'm sure 5 out of 10 people that have tattoos will have some type of religious,
316,
a Bible verse.
Yeah.
All right.
Yep.
But in order to make this walk, I'm having a relationship with him. So I'm able to find the journey to continue in the things I don't know by Jesus. Right. So Jesus comes and he's proof. Like you can scientifically find proof that Jesus existed. Okay. So in the proof that we can't find scientifically of God, we can find proof that Jesus existed.
Yeah.
And Jesus, whom we trust, says, you could trust the Father because he sent me. So now I look at the whole thing and I'm like, Dad, bro, this thing's about God. God didn't answer me in this.
Yeah.
God didn't answer me in that. But I'm saved because of Jesus.
Right.
Because it says, I got to believe in him.
You're saved. Yeah.
And there's a whole bunch of things about God I don't understand.
There's a whole
But
bunch.
he says,
Right.
if you trust me,
Yeah.
you could trust him.
Yeah.
So that's where I'm at right now in my life. You know, like I can't, you know, as a preacher on my life, I got to believe what I'm preaching.
Right.
But now I've arrived in a place where I don't want to share bumper stickers. I don't want to give you a Band-Aid.
Yeah.
When I could tell you how to get to the doctor.
That's so good.
And that's the thing. A lot of times we don't realize that.
I don't want to share a Band-Aid, but I could tell you how to get to the doctor. That's crazy.
I believe that many of those times that we go up and down is because we haven't. Truth will let you find rest.
Right.
If you don't got rest in your belief system, that for 3 months you're holier than thou, and you don't find satisfaction, and then 3 months later you're slipping into things you think you shouldn't be doing.
Yeah.
There's no balance.
Yeah.
It means something in the truth you don't have.
Yeah.
Because God says when we have truth, we can find rest in it. You know what I'm saying? So that's where I'm at right now. I'm not trying to be on the spotlight. I'm not trying to look, and it's funny because I'm on this podcast, but you reached out to me. You know what I'm saying? And I saw this as a perfect platform. I'm like, God, I didn't chase this.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? You
sure,
provided an opportunity. And I just want to say that God is more than just a one-liner.
Yeah.
God is more than just a one-liner.
Right.
A one-liner is not going to fix all your problems. You know what I'm saying? Like, God is powerful and amazing and great, but he's also, you as a person of belief, you are going to be upset sometimes.
Yeah, as you should, again.
You're going to be in pain. You know what I'm saying? Like, people don't say this, but you are.
Yeah.
God's not going to say yes to everything.
Right.
There's going to be people you don't want to die that are going to pass away. There are going to be people fighting in a hospital bed that are not going to make it. You know what I'm saying? But how do we trust a God that can let all that happen, right? Now I got to look at Jesus, who knows God, who is God, but was also a human. I got to find, that's why he's a bridge. I got to find my relationship to God through Jesus, because Jesus was a human. So if the Bible says everything that I've encountered, all my pressures, Jesus have taken on. So he understands me, and I'm important enough to bring me to God. You know what I mean? So if that person that's being that good to me says, you could trust him. You know what I mean? And right now, Paul, I tell you, bro, listen, you're going to go on a date with your wife. Trust me. You want to go to this Italian restaurant in Providence called Zuma's. This is not paid. It's not paid, all right?
Not paid.
You go there, I promise you're going to enjoy it. It's a nice Italian restaurant. They still have a little brick oven style pizza, but like, you know, luxurious pizza. It's a good setting, amazing Italian food. Trust me, if you want Italian, go there. Do you think if you go there, there's a good chance you're gonna enjoy yourself?
Yeah, of course.
All right,
Yeah.
because of your relationship with me,
Right.
right? That same way. So, because of my relationship with Jesus, tells me like, listen, I forgive you. I understand because he forgives. If Jesus could forgive me, it means he understands me. You know what I'm saying? No matter how bad sin I need, God, Jesus forgives it. So if you're forgiving me and allowing me to come to heaven, then the God that runs it all, your Father, you're saying he's good. Trust me.
Yeah.
Really? Even when he let my aunt die, trust me. And the end of the day, some of this parts of the walk is gonna come to blind trust.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm not gonna get all my answers.
Right.
Like when Paul in the Bible told Jesus, Peter in the Bible told Jesus, if it's you, call me on the sea and walking on the sea. The dude didn't need a scientific explanation on how the molecules in the water hardened up so that he can hold up his weight while he's walking.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
My relationship to you, you said, come, I'm gonna go towards you.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So the same way. So in this stage, there's things that have happened that were painful. There are things that happened that have crushed my heart. There's things that has happened that has been frustrating. And I know that God, the Father, runs it all. And some of this stuff he is seeing that's happening and it hasn't changed it or didn't change it. And although I'm frustrated with that aspect of it, he's also the Son. And the Son has been good to me. And he says that the only way to the Father is through him. So I could trust that God is good because the person I love is saying he's good.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So
I love that, man.
Yeah.
I love that breakdown. And ultimately, just going back to, you can't have one without the other. Again, what we said earlier, we can't have struggle without success. You can't have love without evil. You can't be, not afraid and then be afraid. Those things have to exist, right? The bad things in life that happen couldn't exist if the good things in life could happen. If everything was good, if everything was perfect, why would we have a need for God, right? Then God will not be God if everything in this world was perfect. And, when sin entered this world, we have been able to identify one or the other, very much like Adam and Eve in the garden when Adam ate, or when Adam ate from the tree and recognized that he was naked. Who told you were naked, Adam? How'd you know that? That stuff wouldn't be able to exist if there would be no need for God if everything was so perfect. So I loved this conversation. I think this was this was good. I very excited what you're doing and for the men's community. I've toyed with the idea of getting men together in a group platform. And I've shared this with Ariane, my cousin, and we've talked about this quite a bit over the last year or so. And maybe that's something down the road after this baby's born and kind of come to fruition where we can kind of get together and, just chop it up. And I think that men need men and we need guy friends. We need to separate the ideas of this world and be able to, because again, like you said, I can share this with my wife, but she doesn't understand the burdens that we just put on ourselves. And it's not a burden that anything that our family has put on us. It's the burden that we put on ourselves. I had a gentleman, one of my coworkers, his name is Walter Cloud. And he has a men's ministry that he runs out of. Him and his wife are pastors of a church in Middletown. And he came on my show and he talked about the weight that men put on. And one of the things he said is that God said, I'm never going to give you more than you can handle. But when we put on this weight, we almost feel like sometimes we can't handle it. And he said, but didn't God tell you that there's not anything, I'm not going to put anything on you that you can't bear? And then it was that moment that I was like, wow, man, it's really, and I love what you said. It's the relationship with Jesus, because then Jesus goes to the Father. I actually never really comprehended that until what you just said. And I did an episode with, I don't know if you remember him, but he's a really good friend of mine from the past. I brought him to the church. You might see him on social, Evangelist Matias Rojas.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah.
Him and I did the show together. And he told me, he said, listen, I know what you told me your walk, you told me your struggle. We talked a little bit off air. And he's like, listen, find your way back to Jesus through the gospel. And what you just said right now just connected the dots, because I struggle with, man, that relationship piece, right? I'm reading the Bible to find one-liners, right? I'm reading the Bible to tell somebody that you can do it through Christ. I'm not reading it for the relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, you go through the gospel because what you just said, you go through God, go to God through Jesus. So I appreciate your time, man. This was amazing. Before we close up, anything you want to share, anything that you want to cover? Obviously, I want to give you the opportunity to talk about your business, where it is, where people can find you. But is there anything else you want to touch on?
I just want to give a few shout outs. I want to give a shout out to my wife, Danny Garcia, my kids, Mariana, Grace, and Daniel, my granddaughter. Yes, I'm a grandfather. Leilani.
Congratulations.
Shout outs. Yep. Bree. So I can't forget my barbershop family. You know what I mean? I Got You Next Barbershop, located in Groton. This year we're gonna fulfill 10 years.
Congrats.
Being open. So
awesome.
That's gonna be a great celebration. Everybody at the shop, my church family, International Family Worship Center in New London. Great group of people.
Is that on Huntington?
Yep.
Okay.
It's on Huntington. Yep. And I'm glad to have the opportunity. And I just want to say one last thing just to close the thought of what we're talking about. So we talked about the imbalance, and I said is that relationship with God and with Jesus is a relationship. So it's in your day in and day out. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? It's not a checkoff list. It's in life. You don't have the mentality, I gotta tell my wife I love you, I gotta open up the door, it just flows from you because you're in a relationship. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And it's just like that, whether it's, while you're cleaning up, you're having conversation pieces, you got your worship music to inspire you, you're around guys. It's literally a relationship. You know what I mean? It's not a checkoff, It's a checkoff of you being given a gift at the end of your completion of the task. Mm-hmm. But you've been given the gift in the beginning.
Yeah.
So everything else is a relationship. It's like, let's get this out the way. You got the gift.
Right. And I want to piggyback quickly too off of that, because what I'm finding, the more discussions that I have with this is where the fire gets ignited again, right? So when I had this conversation a couple of times, very passively, not as intense as this one or the other one with Matias or some others that I had, where I'm talking strictly about my relationship with God, or we're talking about the journey in faith. But when you get with the people, very much like yourself, that spark ignites, right? So it really makes true to the scripture where it says that when two are more in his name, he's there. And I don't know if you feel that way when you are with more than one, whether it's a men's group or anything like that. I have Tim Allen coming on, I think at the end of this month, where we're gonna unpack some stuff too on that front. I really can't wait for that episode, but we're gonna unpack some stuff there. But I really believe that the more people you have in your circle that are within that alignment of relationship with Jesus, is where you can find yourself going in the right direction. But then when you don't align yourself with that, when, I'm, like I said, when I'm venturing off and putting myself, you got a bowl on Monday nights, I'm having a few beers and things like that, for the next month, I'm not connected. So just even this conversation, which I'm really grateful for, I am able to really feel that presence, because here we are talking about what men struggle with, but I think the underlying tone is what we discussed throughout this conversation is love. And you said that we need to love first, but we can't love unless we realize that he loved us first, right? So I'm really thankful for this conversation, for sure. And I'm really happy that we were able to make it happen. So,
oh no, thank you.
Yeah, appreciate it,
man. Anytime, man.
Yeah, thanks, bro.